I just want to make some broad observations, if I can, about Asialink and about this report, the Melbourne Institute Asialink Index, which Sid, I'm happy to refer to from now on also as the index, and to put it in the broader context and in terms of how I would see the world. I guess you look at the world over the last couple of decades, the first observation you'd make is that world trade is in fact what has driven world GDP growth. And across the world, world trade has been growing at a significantly faster rate than GDP growth. But if you look at what drives what, there's no doubt that the opening up of markets, reducing of trade barriers, more movement of investment and trade and goods and people is what's driven world economic growth. The second thing that really flows from that, and is part of that, is that that growth in trade has been most marked in the Asia-Pacific region, by a long, long way. And wherever you go around the world, if you look at where investment is going, you look at where traded goods are going, you look at where the movement of people is most, it's been in the Asia-Pacific region. The third point I'd make out of all of that is that China, of course, has been growing the fastest of all. And I think we all know some of those figures about China, and the next 20 years, China will be investing as much in new infrastructure as Western Europe has invested over the last 200 years. The fourth point, I think, that flows from all of that is that if you look over the last couple of decades, we've moved along the continuum where we've seen increased flows of trade and investment to this last decade where we're now seeing significantly increased flows of people. And when you look at the maturity of economic relationships around the world, they tend to work in that way. You go through the traded goods, you go through the investment flows, but it's the movement of people which really add depth to that relationship. And so if you think of tourism, and I'll obviously talk about these things later, if you talk about education, and you talk about the movement of people in relation to services, in the last decade, I think what's been the defining element of our relationship with the Asia-Pacific region has been the increased movement of people, the dramatically increased movement of people. And the final point I'd make about all of that, to put a Victorian flavour on it, if I could, is that for our state, we've not shared a great deal in the resources boom. That's been more a phenomena for Western Australia and for Queensland. But if you look at this issue of the movement of people, the share that Victoria is winning of that movement of people to and from the Asia-Pacific is quite phenomenal. And when people ask why is it that in the current year Victoria is the strongest performing state economy, why we've generated more jobs than any other economy in Australia, and why it is that Access Economics predicts that Victoria will be the fastest growing economy in financial year 10-11, it's because I believe of this significant growth that we're seeing, this significant engagement which is in people and services and high value add products. And as I go through my speech today, you'll see just what a huge share in each of those areas, in tourism, in education and in skilled migration, Victoria is accounting for in terms of our engagement with the Asia Pacific.